Detroit Lions will rise.
Okay, the man, the mystery, Mathieu Betts. Is he going to be back in Detroit in 2025? That's what we're going to talk about today. I appreciate the mailbag question this afternoon. So let's just dive right into it. So Mathieu Betts last season, very intriguing free agency pickup by the Detroit Lions. He is one that gave us a ton of promise and a ton of hope after what he had accomplished in 2024 season with the BC Lions. He had produced 18 sacks in 18 games north of the border there, earned himself honors of the CFL's most outstanding defensive player of the season for 2023. I apologize, his stats were in 2023. However, in Detroit, it just never really seemed to fully come together for Mathieu Betts, or Mathieu Betts, however you'd like to pronounce his name, Mr. Betts. So are all the bets back on Betts this season? I'm not so sure. I'm going to tell you why in just a moment, because something has changed with him and his play drastically. And I'm going to show you here in just a moment what that is. So when the Lions tried to get him to play this edge in hybrid linebacker Sam role, it just didn't work out. Kind of like the same thing for James Houston, right? Aaron Glenn's trying to force a guy to do something that maybe he hasn't done, which he hasn't, and which maybe he's not good at doing, which he wasn't, and just let the guy be what he is. And that is an edge rusher, someone that can rush the passer and not hang out and have to, run routes downfield with tight ends and running backs. It was never going to work out for him if that's the role that they were going to force him into becoming. And clearly that's what happened. So Dan Campbell admitted about, midway through camp last season that this just wasn't happening. It wasn't a good fit. It was kind of slow. And, they still had hope for the guy, but, they weren't mincing words either, that it just wasn't coming together as quickly as they hoped. And they kind of brought him all the way back down to, brand new, started training camp, refocused, and tried to have him start over, and it just didn't work out. Dan Campbell's quote on this situation was very simple, and it was, we had him working the Sam linebacker. He was still working some D-end, and so now we are just kind of pulling back on him a little bit. We feel like, he's thinking a lot because we've thrown so much at him. We want to dial it back. The kid is, he's a crafty rusher. He's good with his hands, and listen, it's early. He's improved. He's made a ton of improvement, so we'll see where it goes. And the thing that I want to pull out of his quote is the fact that they threw so much at him. Guys that have not been in an NFL system, and look, he's playing football, right? There's not a whole lot of difference between what goes on down here versus up there. There's a few schematically things that are different, and the way they line up on the field is a little bit different, but it's kind of the same, right? It's football. So why are you throwing so much at the guy? Sometimes the best way to get the most out of your players is just to give them enough, right? Make them be dangerous with what they can utilize to the best of their talents and abilities and strengths. Yeah, you have to find what their weaknesses are and hope that those don't get exploited, but you cannot put them in that position. And so I just feel like Aaron Glenn kind of wasted an opportunity on Mathieu Betts. But I'm going to reserve, my opinion here and just say that Dan Campbell knew what was right for his team, and it did not work out. So he did not make the 53-man roster. He was then cut with Mitchell Agood. Agood came back to the practice squad. And so that was really it, but now we're up at the moment where decisions have to be made for Mathieu Betts for 2025. And I was kind of following this, and this is a perfect opportunity to answer this question in the mailbag, because NFL teams actually can request permission to work out players in the CFL. Number one. Number two, if an NFL team offers a contract, CFL players can opt out of their CFL contract. Number three, this also applies to any CFL contracts regardless of how long they are. And that's important here in just a minute. I'll tell you why. The pending CFL free agents, they don't need to opt out. They can just go ahead and take the audition, if you will. But here's the problem. If players' contracts expire on February 11, right, then they can just terminate it if an NFL contract is offered, right? The problem is this, though. The window is only open from November 18th of 2024, and it closes on February 11th, 2025. So we have just 8 days. If Mathieu Betts is going to be an option again this season for the Detroit Lions to bring in, it has to happen now. right? This is the window for this opportunity. Otherwise, it's closed. So I'm hedging, towards the fact that it's probably not going to happen, and that Mathieu Betts is not going to be a Detroit Lion this season or probably ever again. And here's why. Let me show you. Mathieu Betts is now the highest paid defensive player in the CFL. But I will tell you that this pales in comparison to the minimum that you make as an NFL athlete, which is close to $1 million. So the BC Lions signed Canadian defensive lineman Mathieu Betts to a 2-year extension through 2026. Now, according to 3 Down Nation insider Justin Dunk, Betts has become the highest paid defensive player in the CFL for the 2025 season. He'll earn $260K in hard money with $6,000 additional available in All-Star and award incentives. In 2026, the veteran is set to make $270,000 in hard money. I don't know what the difference is between hard and soft money here. I mean, money's money. Are they giving him coins? Are they giving him cash? What are they doing here? So anyway, look, that's nothing, man. That's peanuts compared to what these guys make in a season down here. Now, they might make $260K just throughout training camp. If they start in, from February 11th through training camp, you might make $260K. I mean, there's a lot of money that these guys can make, especially if they, get a good signing bonus and whatnot, from the team that they're going to go train with, because their contract really doesn't kick in until week 1, if I remember correctly, in the NFL. That's when they really start to get paid. So it goes on to say that obviously Matthew's an elite player in this league, who's been playing at a premium position, and he's truly one of one, meaning there isn't another player like him in the NFL or the CFL. This is what their manager, Ryan Rigmaiden, said in a statement. So Betts, obviously, with the Detroit Lions training camp and preseason in 2024, he recorded 2 tackles and 1 sack in 3 exhibition games. And then after being released among the final roster decisions, he returned to British Columbia on August 30. He registered 13 defensive tackles and 2 sacks in 7 regular season games, while adding his first career touchdown on an interception return in a victory over Calgary on October 4. So where I'm going to go to next is this. This is the huge problem, I think, for Mathieu Betts right now. In 2023, he had 18 sacks right here. He only had 2 in 2024. That's not good. So for Mr. Mathieu Betts, I have a feeling that the window is now closed. And not only do I feel that it's closed now, and I think it's going to remain closed between now and February 11th, there is no news out of Allen Park that Mathieu Betts even has a shot at joining the Lions this season. And that's too bad. A lot of hope for this kid. Wish him nothing but the best. But perfect time, again, like I said, to answer this mailbag question and talk about Mr. Betts, because, man, there was so much hopium for this guy. Really enjoyed watching, what he was doing when he was doing it. Just didn't all click for him here in Detroit. So that's your news on Mathieu Betts. It doesn't sound like he's going to be back this season, and this story in this chapter is now closed.
Detroit Lions will